What's going on, everybody? Jason right here with Brandy for a change and a special guest. Today we'll be talking to Aaron Hale, co-founder of Extraordinary Delights. Aaron is a veteran. He was an expert EOD tech in the military and an entrepreneur with his business as well. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And Brandy, thank you for showing up finally.
You know, I've decided to bless you with my presence today, so you should feel honored.
We feel honored. So, Aaron, we would love to hear your story, how you got to this point where you are sitting in the chair today. So you can tell us your story, the long version, the short version, whatever you like, my friend.
Hey, thanks a lot. And again, thanks for having me on, Jason, and Brandy, special guest host. But I actually grew up with in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad actually started his life, his career in forensic accounting with his father. My grandfather was a forensic accountant. Then my dad split off and started his own accounting firm. And early in midlife, he sold that company off, tried retiring. That didn't really stick, so he started another accounting firm and sold that off recently. And still, into his 70s, he's just a workaholic and loves it. My mother's side, she's run businesses from security guard companies and janitorial services to window film hanging. And it's just in our family. However, I went to college and I didn't really have a whole lot of direction. I knew that I wanted to be in the business world, but I wasn't quite sure. Didn't have that ambition or a specific goal. So, without that roadmap, I was a bit lost, and that showed when I was in college. So I dabbled in classes, and my grades reflected that. And eventually it was kind of a mutual thing. I didn't want to go back, and school really didn't want me. So after gaining my freshman 50 and and pretty much enjoying Animal House for a few semesters, I decided I needed to do something else. And I joined the military. I lost that 50. In fact, I lost nearly 65 pounds by the time it was about 6 months before I actually went to basic training. And I just changed my lifestyle, a lot less beer, a lot more, walking and working out. And then I lost another 15 in basic training. So I went from nearly 225 to around 165.
Wow.
And but I joined the Navy first, and at the time I wanted to be a chef, and I needed to join. I joined the military to get the GI Bill. It was more of like it was a selfish endeavor, really. I wanted the GI Bill. I was going to do 4 years and get out. I was going to let the Navy teach me how to be a cook. And then when I got the GI Bill, I'd go to a culinary school and become a chef. And 8 years later, I realized that I loved being in the service. And I'd found it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about duty. It was about service. It was serving my country. And I really loved being in the military. But I realized, though, in my progression from more of a self-centered wants to living a life of service, that I wanted to do something a little more direct with the wars, both wars in full swing. I wanted to be somewhere right in the middle where I could be doing something more direct. So I learned about explosive ordnance disposal, or EOD, which is the military's bomb squad. I switched from uniforms and went over to the Army and trained as an EOD technician. I was quickly deployed, soon thereafter at graduation from EOD school to Iraq, and then again to Afghanistan in 2011. And that's when, about 8 months into my 12-month rotation, I was injured by an IED. The blast stole my eyes, cracked my skull, blew up both my eardrums, and sent me to Walter Reed, and effectively, ended my military service.
Right.
For about a year and a half or so after I'd left the hospital, I did go back down to the EOD school and became an instructor. But it was just during the time I was awaiting the medical board procedures, and for them to tell me that I'd be getting my disability rating and medically retiring. In that time, though, I started my speaking career and started telling my story across the country. And I also found the outdoors again. And this was more of just a terror, a fear of being stuck indoors and not, being a victim to my injuries. I didn't want that to happen. So I sought out every opportunity to get outside. So I began running, mountain climbing, whitewater kayaking, and just everything I could do to get outside. Ran marathons, qualified for Boston in 2015. And yeah, life was going really well until late summer 2015. I contracted bacterial meningitis. Apparently, the cracks in my skull, I was leaking spinal fluid right out of my nose. It had been patched, but I guess either it hadn't been patched completely or it reopened. And a pathway out is also a pathway in, and a bacteria gotten in there and put me right back in the hospital, and it nearly killed me. So facing death a second time. And I made it through, but in the process, either the bacteria or the heavy doses of antibiotics to save my life had stolen what was left of my hearing, leaving me completely deaf, completely blind, and not knowing how I was going to face the rest of my life. The truth there is, it was a support system. It was my military training, a whole number of factors that not only kept me alive through. It was almost 6 months of this silence and darkness before I started hearing again with the cochlear implant. But for 6 months, I was trapped in my body, completely isolated, totally lonely. My whole world ended right at the tips of my fingertips. And this is an awful time. In fact, I'd even lost my inner ear sense of balance, that vestibular balance. So I couldn't even get on my treadmill to stay fit. I was using the trekking poles that I used to use up in the mountains to get around. I was using those just to stay on my feet to get to the mailbox and back.
Wow.
So it was a tough time. My wife, Michaela, girlfriend at the time, was writing every letter of every word she needed to speak to me in the palm of my hand, which, if you can imagine, is just, it was so tedious, so frustrating, but it was the only way I could get a message in. Wow. So it was a tough time, but that's when it was getting to around this time of year, Thanksgiving time, and I threw myself into my old passion of cooking again, and we'd invited friends and family and even a few students from the EOD school where we still live nearby. During the holidays, some military members, if they're at schools or certain duty stations, they might not have enough leave days, vacation days saved up. And even though the base or the school is shut down, these guys are kind of stranded. So we invited a few of them over for this feast. And I started preparing weeks in advance. I mean, a couple of different types of turkeys, different types of stuffing, all the vegetables that, of course, in Thanksgiving, every vegetable dish is made unhealthy somehow.
Butter.
And the desserts, oh my gosh, I was making cakes and pies and cookies and truffles, and I was making batch after batch of fudge. And it was, it was something to do. It was it was my passion, but it was also something to take my mind off of what was going on at the time and how difficult the situation was. And Michaela said she saw something on me she hadn't seen in half a year, and it was a smile on my face. So I was enjoying myself. I was making all this fudge. I was throwing nuts and spices. I was taking booze out of the cabinet.
Quality checking.
And it was great. And as soon as I'd finished one batch, I'd set it aside and I'd start another batch. And eventually, Michaela noticed that I was making more than any family could, consume in one sitting. So she was sneaking it out the front door. I say sneaking, like you got to be real stealthy around a blind deaf guy. But yeah, she was giving it away. And people were coming back to us and saying, can we buy more of this? I've got a birthday or, bar mitzvah or something, baby shower. And the capitalist in me said, well, of course you can. And that's kind of how EOD Confections was born. This time, instead of explosive ordnance disposal, extraordinary delights. And that's how we got started. And before you knew it, I was working 14 and 16-hour days at the stove, making fudge, batch after batch. And Michaela was cutting and boxing and shipping it off. And we were rarely in business. This was a real thing. It was soon we realized that we had to decide if we were going to do, we had to move out of the home kitchen. And so we were in that decision-making process where we had to figure out if we were going to do a real brick and mortar or if we were going straight to online. And after lots of research and trying to figure out how we were going to manage, because, there are a lot of challenges to being blind and deaf, like trying to drive to the office. So we decided we'd go straight to online, direct shipping, and it worked out great. We found a commercial food manufacturer that will make all of our goodies exactly to the standards we like. And now our home kitchen is an R&D lab.
Sweet.
And Michaela manages the operational side, and we do marketing together. And it's been fantastic. It's been we're extremely grateful for the route our lives have taken and how well this has turned out.
I got a question for you. Awesome story, by the way. And I think that your situation would have broken 99.9% of other people. So
Absolutely.
you're a fighter, man. I love it.
Thank you.
This is kind of a random question, but did you ever climb mountains or run marathons before your accident? Was that something you ever did earlier in life?
No. I mean, I was a rock climber.
Yeah.
Growing up in Ohio, there were some peaks, but we did some hiking, but I didn't do real like mountaineering.
Yeah.
And my stepfather did attempt Everest, and he was a mountain climber. It was always in the back of my head. It was, we always have these bucket list things, and it's like that list of the stuff we're going to get to eventually. And of course, having faced, the abyss, I realized that someday never comes. So even though I was blind and then later going deaf, I wasn't going to wait for opportunity to knock. I was going to kick the door right off the hinges, and I was going to go get it.
Oh.
Awesome.
It's really interesting. Once upon a time, I worked in the publishing industry, and it was always haunting to me that I would talk to these authors that were kind of at the end of their life, and they had been sitting on a manuscript their whole life. And I was like, with all due respect, what are you waiting for? Oh, I'm scared people are going to judge me. That's what they would say. And I said, people are going to judge you anyway. Like, don't worry about that, because people are going to judge you whether you do or don't publish it. So like, publish the darn thing. And I did get one guy to finally publish it. Had been waiting like 40 or 50 years, but it's like, that's crazy. It's just a book. Like, publish it. What about all the other things you wanted to do that you'll never do now? So hats off to you for going after that stuff. I don't think I could climb a mountain or run a marathon now. So
I don't think I could cook fudge. In fact, I know I can't cook fudge because I've tried. So since Jason actually let me come back on the podcast today, I do have a question. So I'm a systems and processes girl. Like, I think that should be a system and process for everything. So walk me through what a typical, cooking something session looks like for you, because I can see it and I can hear whether it's boiling or not. And it still doesn't taste very good when it's done. So what does that look like? If you can't see the fudge that you're making, how do you know that it's, at the right consistency and that kind of stuff?
Well, there's all sorts of different factors involved there. One is that I've got the muscle memory. I've got the knowledge of years being in a kitchen. When I was a cook in the Navy, I worked my way up to being, the personal chef of a 3-star admiral, the commander of the 6th Fleet in Gaeta, Italy. So I spent 4 years stationed in Italy, getting to enjoy the culture and, of course, the cuisine and sailing around the Mediterranean.
Nice.
And it really did get to learn quite a bit about the culinary arts. And, of course, I got a lot of practice. And even though I can't see and then later couldn't hear, there's, the sense of touch, sense of smell is very important, of course, in the kitchen, until you burn all your nerve endings and your fingertips off. But besides just memory, there's recipes, times, temperatures, and it's part art, part science, and you follow a formula. So there's lots of techniques.
Would you say that your technique has changed any? Like, so you used to be more, when you were, traveling on that, it was your process did involve sight, and then you had to go more towards like timing it, like this has been on for this, X amount of time or whatever. Has it changed any, your process?
I don't know. I'm sure it has. I couldn't give you an example of how, except that I have to rely on those other techniques. I've got a Bluetooth thermometer that I use both in the kitchen for candy making and for when I throw some kind of hunk of meat into the smoker. It's fantastic. I've got all these talking devices, my computer, my phone. So I've got a Bluetooth thermometer that I can stick into whatever I'm cooking, and then I just check my phone for the cooking times and temperatures and all that. It's
Awesome.
Amazing technology.
Yeah,
So
that is super cool.
when it comes to the food, I'm doing whatever I can, whatever tool, whatever technique, whatever skills I can bring to just make the highest quality, and then it's just tweaking the recipe.
Awesome. Very cool.
So when you mentioned smoking meat, you get my attention because that's something I love to do. What do you like to make on the smoker?
Well, I've got one of those big green eggs because my wife won't let me build one of those brick things in the backyard yet.
Yeah.
So, I'll tell you, side note on that last deployment to Afghanistan, you got to do things in your off time, your downtime to unwind. Because you can't be switched on all the time. So when we were back at the base, I actually built a mud brick pizza oven in the back behind our tent out of the Afghan moon dust. I was actually playing mud, with the mud and making the brick forms and sun drying them. So after a month of doing this, I'd actually built a pizza oven. And I even tried using it as a smoker, and it turned out pretty good.
Nice.
But I love we're big Mexican cuisine fans here, so I love making a big hunk of beef and making barbacoa or smoked pork carnitas. Really great. Yeah.
So tell me again where you live at, because I need to know how long it's going to take me to get to your house for dinner.
We're in the Florida Panhandle. Not far.
It's closer to me than you, Jason. Sorry. You're
yeah,
out
that's all right. Well, our deer season's about to open up, and I'm a big hunter, so we'll have all the meat we can stand here. But when it comes to smoking, I love making the pork shoulders and the ribs. It's kind of the two things I feel like I've absolutely mastered, and I would
Hmm.
against anybody on planet Earth in those two categories. And we'd all eat well in the process. All right.
Well, unfortunately, I haven't got a whole lot of time to attend to the smoker lately since we had identical twin boys 6 months ago.
Oh, congratulations.
That's so exciting.
You stay
Congrats.
busy.
So what's that?
I said you stay busy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we try to try to keep ourselves busy, and we are accomplishing that. My
Very
wife
nice.
thinks she has a hard time telling them apart.
Very cool. So really curious to hear what you think about this. So if you just think about, obviously you're an amazing guy, but if you think about kind of the average entrepreneur or the average wannabe entrepreneur, why do you think most people give up so easily? For example, before I even let you answer that, I recently spoke to a guy and he was frustrated that his quote unquote business wasn't working out. Very frustrated. I said, well, how long have you been at it? His response was 3 weeks. I'm like, come on, man. So what do you think? What do you think people give up so easily?
Uh, Scale. It works in both directions. Now, I'll tell you, I am really just the average Joe that was put into an extraordinary situation. And then I'd never, until, the fudge thing came along, I'd never thought about becoming, having my own business. It, it was, it was a learning process the whole way through. But I think you pick a lofty goal, a big audacious goal, or big hairy audacious goal, and then you break it down into manageable bite-sized pieces. What can I do today to take a step forward? And
Yep.
it's all you got to do. Take one step at a time. You may falter, you may make a mistakes, you may have to turn back and a little U-turn and try it again, but keep that forward progress. Keep moving and towards your goal, toward your values. Keep a certain set of standards and principles, and you got to have faith in that the right outcome, and continue working every single day. That's what I think so many give up or never try, is that they see the top of the mountain, but they don't take the first step to go up it.
Absolutely. I think it's phenomenal. Um, let's see. I really like one thing that you guys do with your business. You guys use storytelling as kind of the foundation of here's who we are, here's why we exist, here's what we're doing. And I know storytelling is very powerful, and it really lets people know, what you represent and where you're coming from, and kind of who they're dealing with. And a lot of business owners don't do this. I don't do a good job of this. I go look at my website now. I know about it because I built the darn thing, but I don't share enough of my story for the stranger that may end up there and say, what is this intentionally inspirational? How do you think more business owners could do this? How could people incorporate kind of their story, their origin story, into their own marketing better?
Um, uh, I think nowadays that customers, people, they want to connect,
Yep.
and I think for especially it's great for small businesses, entrepreneurs, because you show the human side of who's behind the product or the service, and share their story. I know the big businesses, they keep trying to be your friend, but it's not the same. You know, I see all the time when people are like, why are these large companies trying to be my quote unquote friend? But the truth is, when it's a smaller business, when it's a mom and pop,
Yep.
that's what we want to see. That's what customers want. They're buying the brand and not just the product.
Yep. Absolutely.
So a lot of the customer experience research says that we as people purchase things emotionally and then justify them rationally. So, I hear Aaron's story, I am like completely inspired because he's done amazing things. And so my heart immediately says, I want to support this guy. And then I say, oh, well, I need to buy a gift for, to bring to Thanksgiving or whatever. So the story is what makes us emotionally attached to whatever that is, even if it's a dress in Kohl's, right? So I see this dress and I see it and I'm like, oh, that is like my favorite color and I love that. Oh, well, I need a new dress to go to this event. So we purchase emotionally and then justify it rationally. So using the story is like the most number one important thing that you can do in your marketing.
Beautiful.
Chocolate, candy, I mean, and fudge and all the other treats we have on there, that really is an emotional product. You don't buy that for your health.
But dark chocolate is full of antioxidants.
Yeah, I was actually just teaching a chocolate class to a local school, and I was asked about the healthy qualities of cocoa. I said, yeah, if you take out all the sugar and it's just the cocoa powder, cocoa butter, yeah, that's pretty healthy, but it's not going to taste as good. It's like drinking a glass of wine every day. Yes, there are some good qualities to that, but you're also getting the alcohol and it's not good for you. Exactly. So the truth is, everything in moderation. I like to look at it rationally and realistically. What we sell is an emotional product. Mm-hmm. We buy this stuff because it makes us feel good. It takes us back to a time, when we were, maybe when we were kids and, grandma was baking stuff in the kitchen. And it takes to, that family picnic or outing or something like that. It's something that triggers that happiness, receptors in our brain. And that's why we try to make the best products we can, because I don't want to disappoint you when, reliving some kind of memory.
Oh,
that's
awesome.
Powerful. Very good stuff.
So I do have to interject one little thing. So does anybody in y'all's families do the cocoa powder challenge? I mean, you talked about cocoa powder, so I have to throw it out there. Does anybody else do the cocoa powder challenge?
The cocoa powder
I don't know what you're talking about.
So it's because y'all have young children. See, I'm old. I have teenagers.
Oh, stop it.
Is that like the cinnamon challenge? Yes. You eat a spoonful of?
A big old tablespoonful. It is the most hilarious thing you have ever seen, because it's like chocolate all over their face and it's so dry and they can't spit it out and you just can't do anything. It is absolutely the most hilarious thing ever.
I'm gonna have to convince my 8-year-old son to do that.
Oh, that would be awesome. I want video. Send video.
I'm definitely a prankster. I definitely love joking around. And I'm also one of those guys that'll do just about anything on a dare. I know I'm a grown man, but I can't help it.
Yeah, so it's good times.
I have successfully tricked both of my children, 9 and 13, to eat a big bite of baking chocolate, like in a bar, 100% cacao or cocoa or however you say it. Man, it's not good. I try to convince myself every so often, I need to try it again. I'm sure it's not so bad. And as soon as it's in your mouth, you're like, oh God, that's bitter,
Yeah.
Try this. Try dipping Brussels sprouts or pearl onions in chocolate. Mm-hmm. And then, serving them as bonbons.
That'd be awesome. I actually like Brussels sprouts. Buttery and salty.
Phenomenal. Oh, I'm so good for that. Thanksgiving is coming, man. Thanksgiving
it is. Absolutely. All right. I would love to get 3 pieces of advice from you, Aaron, for anyone who is thinking about giving up on their business. Anybody who's like, you know what, it's too hard. I can't do this. What would you give them? What kind of advice would you give them to keep them motivated?
There are times, giving up is never an option. I mean, it's quitting should never be part of your repertoire. But then again, there are times when you have to take an assessment and say that, that maybe the business shouldn't be. Maybe there's a lifespan. This one was a short lifespan. Maybe it's just the wrong business to be in. we got to sometimes need to take a rational look at, the choices we've made. However, too hard, that's not a thing. That's not real. We have to practice our resilience. We got to work on resilience every single day. And sometimes, a little compassion, a little empathy, looking at other people's hardships and putting a little perspective on our own lives makes our day a little bit easier. I don't consider hard being a decision in how I run my business. The most successful of us get up in this world. The wealthiest, the happiest are the ones that get up early. They take charge of their lives and their businesses, and they go do the hard work because it's necessary.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love it. So we know what you've done to get to where you are now. What's next for you and your business and your wife and your life? What are you looking forward to?
Well, we're going to continue to grow and expand our products, the business, or of course, we're busy raising some kids.
They're hoping their next step is just to sleep all night long.
I've got another marathon coming up in December.
Animal.
And I'm looking into other things that I love to consume myself that I may jump into business wise. We've got a local distillery that is interested in the story and maybe starting a line of whiskey with me. I enjoy a cigar now and again, and I've been talking to another company about having private label cigars made. So
I know you can't see Jason right now, but he's like wiping the drool off the side of his face, just so you know.
Yeah, some good stuff.
I'm gonna corner the market and sin, But
perfect.
No, the truth is, I think, like I said, everything in balance out, and when you do decide to indulge yourself, I want to be, I want our brand to be the ones that is the highest quality in your indulgence. You know what I mean?
Love it.
When you think of treating yourself or giving the best gift, maybe it's corporate gifts, which we're taking orders for now. I want to be the favorite, most unique. I want EOD, Extraordinary Delights, to be the go-to.
Very nice.
What? I love what you just said, because it's so when we first talked to you, the story is huge, right? But what you just said is it's not just the story. These are high quality, delicious foods that you want to share. The story is actually an addition to the product that you have. The product is amazing, and the story is just another piece of it. I love that, because that's what makes a sustainable business. You can get by on a story for a while, but if the quality of your product doesn't match what you're saying it is, you're not going to get very far. But your product is high quality.
You're absolutely right. We realized very early on that the story may get our foot in the door. Right. The story is compelling, and it could capture a lot of attention, but if we don't have the quality products to back it up, it may be a one-off. We won't get return customers. We won't get that brand loyalty, and we won't last very long.
Absolutely. Love it.
Beautiful. If somebody listening or watching wants to learn more about your company or learn more about you, what's the best way they can do so?
Well, you can find us in all the social media at EOD Confections. And of course, you can read more about the story and buy all the chocolates you'd like at eodfudge.com.
And what's beautiful about this episode, since I control this, I'm going to make sure this gets released before the holiday season this year as well. Yeah, awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Erin. Brandy, thanks for showing up finally.
Yeah,
It's been fun, my friends.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Nice to meet you, Erin.